Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, jai Om Vishnupada Paramhamsa Parivaraksharya Asatastara Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai, jai Om Vishnupada Paramhamsa Parivaraksharya Asatastara Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai, jai Om Vishnupada Paramhamsa Parivaraksharya Asatastara Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem Sakho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Shri Radharadhanath ki jai, Shriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhana ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gau Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. All glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So I've been given this task to read from Prabhupada Leela Amrita. And because today is Ekadasi, we normally read from Srila Prabhupada's Leela Amrita. And it's volume 4, page 204, Jet Age Parivrakcharya. That's what it's entitled. So we still on May 9th, 1971. Got one paragraph to read there, and then we go on to the next one. Prabhupada also agreed to speak at Wayside Chapel, a center in downtown Sydney ministering to drug addicts and prostitutes. A Wayside sponsor met Srila Prabhupada at the temple and accompanied him to the chapel. The sponsor, a long-haired young man in hippie dress, boasted of how Wayside Chapel helped drug addicts. Prabhupada, however, took it that he was saying the chapel supplied drugs to the addicts. Okay, he misinterpreted that. So, but at Wayside Chapel, a skeptic in the audience challenged Prabhupada. Prabhupada had explained that the chanting of the holy names of God was the only way to actually help people. But the cynic challenged, what good actually is this chanting of Hare Krishna? It saves you from death, Prabhupada answered forcibly. Right? So we see here that so there's many challenges that Prabhupada goes through as he's on his travels, basically from Sydney to India, like that. So here now, these drug addicts, basically, they are challenging Srila Prabhupada. What good is this chanting of the holy names? And Prabhupada said, it saves you from death. And yes, it does not mean that, we're not going to die, but actually we won't take birth again. So the samsara, birth and death in this material world, is prevalent. And Prabhupada says it saves you from death. So that means you don't have to take birth again, and you don't have to die again and again and again. So it's, you get eternal life from chanting Hare Krishna. So we go on to May 12th, 1971. In his quarters in Sydney, Prabhupada wrote the preface to the upcoming edition of Bhagavad Gita as it is. The Macmillan Company had now agreed to print the unabridged manuscript. The contract was signed, the book was being readied for printing, only the preface remained to be written. Prabhupada wrote in his preface that although he was known for starting the Hare Krishna, the Krishna consciousness movement in America, actually the original father of this movement is Lord Krishna himself, giving all credit for his own achievements to his spiritual master. Prabhupada said that the only qualification he himself had was that he tried to present Bhagavad Gita as it is without adulteration. And there's a short note here. Instead of satisfying his own personal material senses, he, a person, has to satisfy the senses of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. The Lord wants this, and he demands it. One has to understand this central point of Bhagavad Gita. Our Krishna consciousness movement is teaching the whole world the central point. And because we are not polluting the theme of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, anyone seriously interested in deriving benefit by studying the Bhagavad Gita must take help from the Krishna consciousness movement for practically understanding of Bhagavad Gita under the direct guidance of the Lord. We hope, therefore, that people will derive the greatest benefit by studying Bhagavad Gita as it is and as we have presented it here. And if even one man becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, we shall consider his attempt a success. So, in the verse 4.2 of Bhagavad Gita, Evam parampara prapraptam imam raja sayavidu sa kalena mata yoga nasa parantapa. Prabhupada is explaining in that purport that there was, so this knowledge is coming down in disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. This is a translation of that verse. And, so in time, this message was distorted, and therefore, Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita again. So in time, as time goes on, the message becomes distorted. And in that purport, Prabhupada says that the demoniac class of men, they present their own interpretations in the Bhagavad Gita, and in that way they distort the message of Krishna, and so people get the wrong understanding of what Bhagavad Gita is. Right? So, and therefore Prabhupada said, we are presenting Bhagavad Gita as the Lord has spoken it. And therefore, we're making so many disciples, Prabhupada is saying, around the world. And in this way, it's changing the hearts of people, whereas people have read other editions of the Bhagavad Gita and he did nothing for them. Right? So, but Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita is actually changing the hearts of people around the world. And it's been translated into so many languages, right? Over 80 languages now. And in that way, people from all classes of life or all, any denomination can read Bhagavad Gita and get the benefit out of it. So in this way, Prabhupada said, Krishna had detected the same when he was present, and therefore he had to speak it again to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So he spoke the Bhagavad Gita again because the message was lost, right? And in the Bhagavad Gita itself, Arjuna asks Krishna, Krishna, how am I to believe, that this message is eternal and it's coming down millions and millions of years ago, that from the sun god, and now to you, and you are speaking it again. How am I to actually understand this? And so Krishna says, yes, that this message was spoken by the sun god, and it has been coming down in the line from Ishvaku to Manu, like that, and that's how it's coming down in the line of disciplic succession. And now this message has been distorted, and therefore, I am speaking this again. So, so in this verse, basically, Krishna is establishing that he is even beyond the sun. This because Arjuna says the sun is so many millions of years, old, and how am I to believe that you, Krishna, you are basically eternal, like this. So in this way, Krishna speaks this verse, and he says that yes, the sun god, this message is eternal, and it's coming down in disciplic succession from the sun god to Ishvaku to Manu, and the different teachers in the line of disciplic succession. Eventually, until Lord Chaitanya's time, and then, through the disciplic succession, it comes to us, through all the Goswamis, like that, and then to Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, and Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada is delivering this message to the whole world. So in this way, we see that, Krishna is eternal, and we living entities are also eternal, part and parcels of the Lord, right? And so this is the message of the Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada goes on to explain, basically Satsvarup Maharaj in this part of the Prabhupada lilamrta, as Prabhupada explained in his preface, he was publishing the full Gita manuscript to establish the Krishna consciousness movement more soundly and progressively. He would do this by presenting transcendental literature like the Bhagavad Gita, but he would also have to go, as Lord Chaitanya has said, to every town and village, either personally or through his agents, his disciples. And wherever he went, he would preach Bhagavad Gita, and whoever would listen. Tomorrow, Prabhupada would leave Australia for a big Pandal festival in Calcutta. Then on to Moscow, Paris, and Los Angeles. Like Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, that no servant is more dear to him than one who preaches Bhagavad Gita to the devotees. And Prabhupada, in all his activities, whether writing a preface, lecturing to prostitutes and drug addicts, teaching a disciple to cook chapatis without burning them, or planning grand projects yet to come was always teaching Bhagavad Gita, and therefore was always the dearest servant of Lord Krishna. Prabhupada stood before the deities of Radha Gopinath with folded hands. After less than a week in Sydney, he was leaving. He knew that the devotees here were not up to the standard required for worshipping Radha and Krishna, and he knew that he was taking a risk entrusting their worship to neophyte disciples, yet an empowered acharya, and as the representative of Lord Chaitanya, he had to implant Krishna consciousness anywhere it might take root. The world was in desperate need. If his disciples followed the process he had given them, chanting, hearing, observing regulative principles, he knew that they would quickly become purified. He had given an analogy. Although in material life, a man must first become a highly qualified lawyer before sitting on the judge's bench, in Krishna consciousness, a sincere devotee is first allowed to sit on the bench to become a brahmana, and later, by the mercy of the holy name and the spiritual master, he becomes qualified. The devotees in Sydney, however, were particularly immature, and Prabhupada made an extraordinary request of Radha Gopinath. Now I am leaving you in the hands of the malechers. I cannot take responsibility. You please guide these boys and girls and give them the intelligence to worship you very nicely. So we see how Prabhupada basically, just in order to propagate Krishna consciousness, he had to do the needful at that time. And although the devotees weren't qualified to worship the deity, but he entrusted their worship to these basically neophyte devotees who didn't know much about deity worship or didn't know anything about deity worship. But he entrusted the deity, the Lord, in their care. And he prayed to Radha Gopinath in this case, and he told the Lord, please, you now take over and teach them how to worship you, basically. So in this way, Prabhupada, he was busy traveling around the world preaching, and, he couldn't stay in one temple, for too long and train the devotees there, and therefore he did this. So we go on now. Prabhupada is flying now to Calcutta. And there, in May 13th, 1971, Prabhupada arrived just in time for the 10th day Calcutta Pandal Festival. On his orders, Giriraj, that's Giriraj Swami, and Tamal Krishna Goswami, has come to organize the festival, just as they had the one in Bombay. Prabhupada had written to Jai Pataka Swami, president of ISKCON Calcutta. In the Sankirtan festival, Pandal, it was very big kitchen arrangement can be made. Then we shall distribute prasadam daily. Try to make this arrangement. Puri, halva, khichdi. However, whatever can be arranged as much as possible. Tamal Krishna and Giriraj have all the ideas. So Prabhupada is instructing now, you do like this, you feed, you cook and you feed prasadam to the devotees that attend. Attendance surpassed that of the Bombay Pandal, with 20 to 30,000 people attending daily, including ministers of parliament and other distinguished speakers. It was one of the biggest religious functions Calcutta had ever seen. The whole city became aware of the strength of the Hare Krishna movement. In the early afternoon, the devotees would begin selling Srila Prabhupada's book from a booth, performing kirtan on stage and distributing prasadam to the masses. Around 6:30, the evening program would begin with a long, intense kirtan, which would increase in its favor in its favor as Prabhupada arrived to the evening arati before the deities of Radha and Krishna. Prabhupada would lecture sometimes in Bengali and sometimes in English. Afterwards, the devotees would show slides of Krishna consciousness movement around the world, and Prabhupada would answer questions from the audience. After the program, people would push forward to receive a morsel of prasadam that had been offered to the deities. Now, this reminds me of the 10 campaign. You know, Parthasarati Maharaj in the early days, you know, he would organize these 10 campaign festivals around, you know, the basically KZN, right? And I basically was introduced to Krishna consciousness through one of these 10 campaigns, and basically took it up more seriously during the 10 campaign. Obviously, I was introduced much earlier, but when the 10 campaign came, like near our house, like, you know, just a few steps away, then, you know, we became enlivened in that way. And, you know, and he would do the similar program that Srila Prabhupada did. You know, he would organize like a huge tent, you know, he would set up, and then the devotees will go on Harinam around the area, you know, and people would come to the program, to the festival, and they listen to the discourses, drama productions, and, you know, on basic teachings like you are not this body, you know, where spirit's sold. There would be dramas, and it used to be so nice, right? And like the fish out of water, you know, the fish out of water. You know that analogy? The fish out of water. The fish cannot be happy on land, and it's only basically happy in water. So they would depict this in a drama, in a sketch, you know, how the fish comes out of the water, and he tries to be happy on land, but he's not happy in land. He's only happy in water. So like this, you know, they would put up different sketches like this, and yeah, and in this way, you know, we become enthused, you know, that, hey, this is like something, and we would buy books and read and become more basically inclined into Krishna consciousness like that. And that's when, like, my family, basically the children took it up very seriously like that. So yes, all glories to His Holiness Parthasarati Das Goswami. Hare Krishna. So yes, so coming in line of disciplic succession. So this is what Prabhupada did by holding Pandal programs, and then when Parthasarati Maharaj came to South Africa, and this is what he did in order to invite people to Krishna consciousness like this. So, and we see how successful that was, because so many devotees came out of these Pandal programs, or these 10 campaigns, should I call them, right? So now we go on to Naxalite terrorists threatened Prabhupada's life. These young communist terrorists who had been active in Calcutta during Prabhupada's visit in 1970 had never disturbed him until now. Their tactics was to approach prominent businessmen in their homes or on the street and coerce them into cooperation with an Naxalite political objective. If a businessman refused, the Naxalites would burn his home and place of business, or even assassinate him. The Naxalites, who were eager for all of Bengal to turn from their religious traditions and embrace communism, saw Prabhupada rekindling the religious spirit of Calcutta. Prabhupada's tremendous crowd gathering Pandal, they concluded, was undermining the principles of communism. So, you know, there was an uprise of communism in Calcutta at that time when Prabhupada was preaching, and, you know, the slogan was "Fly or Die." Fly or die read the note Prabhupada received. He informed the police, who regretted their inability to help. The whole of Calcutta, they said, was in terror of the Naxalites. Prabhupada, however, refused to be intimidated. he would not fly, even if they were to attack him, he said. What better way for a Vaishnava to leave his body than while preaching the glories of the Lord? So we see, Prabhupada was so determined to go on preaching that, even if his life was threatened, by these Naxalites, but still he went on. And that reminds me, of, His Holiness Indradumna Swami, my spiritual master, who basically went to Poland, communist country, to preach, and it was, so in those early days, he was also, he would set up festivals like this along the Baltic coast, and these skinheads would come, they were like, how should we say, like hooligans, they would come and disrupt the festivals like that. But with his tolerance and persistence, this festival is going on right up till now. At this present moment, Srila Gurudev is in Poland organizing these festivals and taking it around the Baltic Sea coast. And we see in his recent diary, he wrote that, so much so that he preached for so many years, for 40 years or so and more, basically, in that area, in those areas, and people would come up to him, when in the end, when he would be signing Bhagavad Gitas, then people would come up to him and tell him that, so many years ago you came to my town and you preached, and I got, prasadam, or I got a book, and I've been reading it all that time and practicing Krishna consciousness, by chanting also the holy names. And in this way, now I've come to Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanande. So yes, these people would come and acknowledge his presence so many years ago, where they got a glimpse of Krishna consciousness, and now they want to take it up seriously by buying a Bhagavad Gita and reading it, or their Bhagavad Gita, someone else took it away, and in this way they want to get another Bhagavad Gita so that they can worship that book and read it and basically get enlightenment from the Bhagavad Gita. And this reminds me, once Gurudev was preaching, and he came into Prabhupada's room, and he had a very difficult day, and Prabhupada asked him how was the preaching, and Prabhupada said, and Srila Gurudev said it was too intense, and Prabhupada said, when did I tell you that preaching was easy? So preaching is not easy, especially if you have to encounter people like these. And we find that many years ago, I took up this instruction from my spiritual master when I read his diary. I read his books, actually, or his lecture. I was listening to his lecture online, and he was saying, I want all my disciples to preach. And I said, oh my God, I'm his disciple, I'm not preaching, I'm not going out and doing anything substantial, although I'm in the temple. So, but I was doing book distribution and stuff. And then he said, I want all my disciples to preach. And that's when I started holding Namahatas in the African areas, basically, like Kwamashu. I started at Kwamashu first. And with the help of Lakshminath Prabhu, if any one of you know him, we would go in the evenings and hold Namahatas in one of the aspiring devotees' homes, and eventually they got initiated, and we would hold these programs in Kwamashu, and he would leave me there, and he would go right deep into Kwamashu because he had contacts from the university, and he would take prasadam for them, and they would stay far out, and he would, he would go and he would basically give them prasadam, and then he would come back when the program is finished. And here I would be chanting and dancing with the children and giving them some philosophy from Bhagavad Gita, like this. So it was very nice until it was stopped for some reason, and then in Valbidat, we took it up in Valbidat at Radhesham Prabhu's house. And yes, we did have some difficulties, but not so much that what Prabhupada has experienced. And I remember one time during the xenophobia attacks, right, where people were being set alight, right, houses were being burned, and people were being, their things were being stolen, and y'all know this is South Africa. It was all over the paper, right, and what was going on. And so during that time, they entered Radhesham Prabhu's house also, because he is basically a foreigner, right? And when they entered and they saw the pictures of Krishna, and and they recognized that he was a devotee, then they said, no, leave him, because we always, in my programs, I would cook prasadam and distribute there, and they would say, they left him. They said, no, he supplies us with food, and we won't attack him. So they left, So just by Prabhupada's mercy, and how this mercy is coming down in the line of disciplic succession, from spiritual master to disciple, to spiritual master to disciple, like this. So from Prabhupada to Srila Gurudev, from Gurudev to me, and Lakshmanath Prabhu and me, like this. So it's in disciplic succession. This is how this message is coming down, and this is basically the spirit of preaching. When one takes on the spirit of preaching, and here this note is being made that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says there's no servant more dearer than him who preaches the message of the Bhagavad Gita, or the scriptures, basically. So there's no servant more dear than to the Lord than those who are preaching the message of Krishna consciousness. So in this way, the programs were still going on until my recent ordeal with my health. We have stopped, but still, we invite the children over to take prasadam, like that. So in this way, there is some contact. They have some contact with Krishna consciousness, and it won't be forgotten altogether. So yes. This preaching is what Prabhupada basically became enlivened when he heard the book scores, or any preaching program, and he would want to know how many people attended and what was the message, like this. So Prabhupada was very enlivened with these scores, right, these book scores. So in this way, even if we cannot go out and, preach to the local people, at least give them a book of, one of Prabhupada's books, and in this way they will read it and become enlivened. So their lives will change drastically. Prabhupada said even one word, if they read, one paragraph, one word, one letter in the book, that would change their lives. So this is how important Srila Prabhupada's books are. Right? So let's go on reading. Conceiving the value of Mayapur. Conceiving the value of Mayapur was difficult for the devotees, however. One devotee journeyed from Calcutta to see the new ISKCON property, and on returning asked Prabhupada, what are we doing? What are we going to do there? It's just a big empty field. Nothing is there. Because there are no factories and cars, Prabhupada replied. Therefore you think that there is nothing to do. But we are going to chant Hare Krishna in Mayapur. We will build a big temple there, and all the devotees in the world would go out and chant Hare Krishna in that place of Lord Chaitanya's birth. On May 28, Prabhupada wrote, you will be glad to learn that we have purchased about 5 acres of land in Mayapur, the birth site of Lord Chaitanya, and we have proposed to hold a nice festival there from Janmashtami day for 2 weeks. At that time, the foundation stone was set down. I wish that all our leading disciples come to India at that time. There are 50 branches, so at least one from each branch should attend the function. So we see, it was an empty field, right? And Prabhupada, he went and held kirtan there because he could see. Prabhupada was Sri Kalagya. He could see the future, and he could see that in time there would be a temple there. And basically, that was in his mind, and he was planning to do so, right? And it was a prediction from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was sitting in his house, basically, which was across the Ganga, and he would he saw this this beautiful temple coming up, and the devotee, and he saw this beautiful temple and devotees from all over around the world chanting and dancing, to the holy names of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And now Prabhupada was fulfilling this prophecy. And today we see that this huge, beautiful temple, the TOVP, right, the Temple of Vedic Planetarium, has come up. And devotees from all around the world are coming there, and they live there basically, and they are taking up this mission and going around through the mercy of Jayapataka Swami. They are going around Calcutta and around to the neighboring tribal villages basically, and giving out Krishna consciousness. Just like what Prabhupada, how he established the Pandal program, just like that, they are going out, the disciples of Jayapataka Swami, they are going out and they are preaching as well and bringing all these people to Krishna consciousness. So we see how effective, Prabhupada's message is, that it's coming down in the line of disciplic succession, and it's touching the hearts, touched the heart of his disciples, and now his grand disciples are taking it on, and his great grand disciples are also taking it on. So we see this is how powerful Srila Prabhupada is, and for the next 10,000 years, Prabhupada said this Krishna consciousness movement will go on for the next 10,000 years. So, whatever Prabhupada predicts and whatever is said in scripture is the absolute truth, and it is taking place, actually. We can see it before our eyes, right? So, and as the disciples were asking him, this is just an empty field, there's nobody here. What are we going to do here? And then Prabhupada said, we'll chant and we'll dance. We'll chant, have Sankirtan here. So, and because Prabhupada knew that was a holy place, and, in time, all these things manifested. Right? We go to Mayapur today, you'll see how beautiful it is. And, and become enlivened by the kirtan and the discourses, everything. What actually attracts me is in Mayapur is the elephant parade, right? Where they take the deities on the elephant. That basically is like so attractive, and devotees having Sankirtan basically and going all around with this elephant. I actually have videos of that because I was staying on the upper floor, and the parade was going at the bottom, and devotees were chanting and dancing, and so I was in the parade, but I ran upstairs to take a video of that. I think I have it somewhere. So of the elephant parade and the Sankirtan, basically, like that. So the deity is seated on the elephant, and so it was like so beautiful. In June 1971, for months Prabhupada had been planning to visit Moscow. Aside from his desiring to preach to the Russian people, he had a specific meeting in mind with a Russian Indology professor, G.G. Kadovsky. Professor Kadovsky headed the Department of Indian and South Asian Studies at Moscow's USSR Academy of Sciences. And Prabhupada had been corresponding with him for a year. Krishnadas was, so this conversation is there in the Science of Self-Realization with Srila Prabhupada and Professor Kadovsky. He knew much about the Indian culture because he presents so many things, in the Science of Self-Realization. He talks about the caste system. He talks about, different things that he picked up whilst in India and also from his studies of the scriptures like that. So, and he poses these questions to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada clears them up, where he talks about the Varna ashram system, of management like that. So let's go on reading. Krishnadas in West Germany, with the help of a Dr. Bernard of the University of Hamburg, had obtained the names of other Russian scholars of Indology. A letter to Krishnadas in December of 1970 had revealed Prabhupada's plan for preaching in Russia. So, basically Russia was the iron curtain. You couldn't get in, to preach or to do anything there, because people, basically foreigners, were scrutinized, upon entry to the Soviet Union. So, and here Prabhupada said, I'm very encouraged to see your enthusiasm for preaching this message to the Russian people, and your idea to send letters with the help of Dr. Bernard is very good. He is a big scholar, and he also appreciates our movements. So, if you arrange a tour of Russia for me, I am prepared to accept. Let us see what Krishna desires. If we can go to Russia with our World Sankirtan party, I am certain that it will be very much appreciated, and people will see the real peace movement is chanting process, chanting the holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada had coached Krishnadas and how best to cultivate the Russian Indologists. So this is an excerpt, I think, from the letter. You can ask them some questions like, what is the ultimate goal of life? What is your ideal ultimate goal of life? What is the ultimate difference? What is the difference between the animal and human life? What is religion? Why is religion accepted by all kinds of civilized societies? What is your conception of the original creation? In this way, questions may be put to find out what is their standing. We do not grudge an atheist, provided he has got some philosophical standing. In this way, try to elicit some answers from the professor. If you can finally establish one center in Moscow, it will be a great credit to you. So far, studying Russian language is not necessary, but if you do so, it is all right. I want very much a center in Russia. For the time being, I shall desire the Moscow center. So we see that, how Prabhupada went there, and he only spoke to, a few people, maybe one person who was actually very interested. And in this way, the movement started in Russia, where he would make copies, of the Bhagavad Gita and distribute it like this. So this is how the movement started in Russia. Prabhupada just met one person, and in his hotel room only, and he spoke to that person, and then this is how, the whole Russian yatra, basically. Now, if you look at it in Mayapur and Vrindavan, there's so many Russian devotees. that, and it all began with planting the seed, planting the seed in one person, and the whole of basically Russia was basically transformed. We'll say it was transformed in that, that in time, the curtain, the iron curtain basically opened up, and, people start accepting like this different religions. And yes, when my spiritual master went to Russia, and he had found that people knew about Vedic culture because they had the Ramayana in Russian. They had the Mahabharata in Russian. They had different scriptures in Russian, in the Russian language, but they were kept hidden, and until such time, that when Krishna consciousness sprouted, then all these start surfacing like this. So people were inclined to Vedic culture, and they were reading, right? So I'm very much encouraged to see your enthusiasm for preaching this message. Oh, I read that, right? Srila Prabhupada had coached Krishna Das on how to best cultivate the Russian Indologist. I read that on the side. Srila Prabhupada personally replied to Professor Kotavsky, "It was understood that you and your university are interested in hearing about Krishna culture and philosophy. This ancient Krishna culture and philosophy is the oldest in the world or in the universe. At least from the historical point of view, it is not less than 5,000 years old. Perhaps you may know that I have started the cultural movement since 1966, and it is already spreading all over the world. Krishna culture is so popular in India that even the government attracts many foreigners by Air India timetable to visit Vrindavan, the land of Krishna culture. Enclosed, please find one page from the latest Air India timetable, April 1971, wherein the Krishna culture is depicted for general attraction. My life is dedicated in spreading this Krishna culture all over the world. I think if you give me a chance to speak about the Krishna culture, the philosophy in your country, it will be very much appreciated. This simple program will with great profit. The culture is so well planned that it would be acceptable by any thoughtful men throughout the whole world." So this was Prabhupada's letter to Professor Kotevsky. So having preached a year in the Eastern Hemisphere, Prabhupada was eager to return to the West, and he planned to fly to Moscow and on to Europe. For Srila Prabhupada and his traveling companions, Shyamasundar and Aravinda, getting tourist visas for Russia was simple. They would take a 5-day government-controlled tour, and every activity planned by the Soviet Union, Soviet Tourist Bureau, and everything paid for in advance. Right? So, what's the time? Okay, we'll read a little more. Captain Lal, the pilot of the flight to Moscow, considered Prabhupada an important passenger and came back to visit him during the flight. They spoke of Prabhupada's movement, his chances for lecturing in Moscow and Bombay, where Prabhupada was trying to purchase land. Captain Lal invited Prabhupada to the cockpit, and Prabhupada came and sat behind the captain, asking technical questions about equipment and the flight. Prabhupada and Captain Lal agreed to meet again in Moscow. Prabhupada, his secretary, and his servant cleared Soviet customs and immigration quickly and smoothly. and a government tourist guide escorted them by limousine to the Hotel National, the hotel near Red Square, Lenin's tomb, and the Kremlin. Was expensive but plain. Prabhupada found his room dingy and cramped, with bare space for a bed and 2 chairs. The room for Shyamasundar and Aravinda was far away, and Prabhupada decided that Aravinda should share the room with him instead, crowding Srila Prabhupada's room all the more. Aravinda told the hotel manager that they would not eat at the hotel fare, but would have to cook their own meals. The manager refused at first, but finally allowed them to use the maid's kitchen. Aravinda told the hotel manager that they would not eat. Right. Sorry about that. The problem solved. The next was getting food. Prabhupada sent Shyamasundar out. Across the street, Shyamasundar found a milk and yogurt store, but he returned to Prabhupada's room without any fruit, vegetables, or rice. Prabhupada sent him out again, and this time Shyamasundar was gone practically all day, returning with only a couple of cabbages. Prabhupada sent him out the next day for rice. When Shyamasundar returned with rice after several hours, Prabhupada saw that it was poor. It was a poor North Korean variety, very hard. Prabhupada asked for fruit, but Shyamasundar had to hike for miles through the city to find anything fresh, a few red cherries. However, wherever Shyamasundar went, he would have to stand in long queues to purchase anything. Usually, however, someone in the queue would notice that he was a tourist and would bring him to the front of the line. Everything Shyamasundar purchased was with coupons. So we see how difficult it was for them to get anything, and everything was with the coupon system, right? Because everything was had red tape, right? So it was very, very difficult. So we'll just read this last paragraph and stop. Prabhupada remained peaceful and regulated, keeping to his daily schedule. He would rise early and translate, and in the cool of early mornings, he would go out for a walk through the all but deserted streets. Prabhupada was wearing a saffron robe, strode quickly, Shyamasundar sometimes running ahead to photograph him. As they had passed Lenin tomb, a queue would already be forming. Just see, Prabhupada commented one morning, that is their God. The people don't understand the difference between the body and spirit. They accept the body as the real person. Prabhupada appreciated the sparseness of the traffic, some trolley and bicycles, but mostly pedestrians. As he walked among the old, ornate buildings, he saw elderly women hosing and the white streets. Elderly women hosing the white streets. A good practice, he said. The Russian people appeared to live structured, regulated lives much more than the Americans. These simple, austere people, unspoiled by the rampant hedonism so common in America, were fertile for Krishna consciousness, but devoid of spiritual substance. They appeared morose. So we'll stop here, and if anyone would like to comment or give their realizations. Grantha Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Prabhupada lilamrta ki jai, Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.